All right, everyone, we're getting ready to go. Welcome to another episode of the Amusing Panda live stream, all about War Machine and Hordes. This is your one-stop shop to learn anything about strategy and tactics in this game.
This is the Gunbunnies podcast taking over the Amusing Panda podcast this week, as Alex Cosma cannot be joining us today. And in our stead, yes, the Invisible Keith. This is Keith, the producer, formerly of both the Gunbunnies podcast and the producer of Amusing Panda. And I'm joined with my co-host, the star of the Gunbunnies podcast, Cass. And we will be talking to you all today about, first off, with some news and announcements. So I'll let Cass go ahead and get started with that.
Good evening, good morning for those in the morning, and good afternoon to all in Amorian. Okay, yeah, it's been a long time. All right, so I actually want to start with something that we used to do, which is going over events. And lovely, lovely Longshanks has us able to go over events. So,
Cass,
what?
I really just love the opportunity to show, Cosma how to run a show, for a change.
Oh my god. Okay. Wow. All right.
Real news and announcements, get some,
Oh my
motions,
gosh.
events, bring a little energy to this thing, Thankfully, we have Jay Beatnick with us here to keep us company because he's definitely part of the show. Like, he's been a very fantastic participator in the chat, and I always enjoy seeing him there.
All right, so we have we get to do worldwide here. We have Christmas Carnage coming on the 13th. Battlefield Berlin in Berlin, Germany. We have Club Strick. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, but Christmas Party at the Attic in Poland. We have GE December 2025 Steamroller in Arkansas, United States. We have the Dream City Games December Steamroller at Dream City Games. At Florida, your home state, United States. We have Dayton December Dust Up at Epic Loot Games in Ohio, United States. Nearby us, we have the Winter Argus at Portal Games. Winter Argus or Invitational, run by Erica and Andy Bev, run by the Bevs. Excellent. That's in Pennsylvania. We have the Minority Report doing Toys for Tots at Just Roll With It, Spring Hill, Tennessee. And we have the Steamroller December to Dismember in Alberta, Canada. Love that. Forge Wargaming, Sylvan Lake. We have Isle of Games in Arizona, United States, that's having a 100-point steamroller. We have the Farewell to Spell Rack, done by Gone Guy Games in Oregon, United States. We have Centra MTG Volume 12 in Poland, Mariansko, Poland. We have the and that starts on the 14th. All previous ones was the 13th. Now the 14th. We'll go to that Sunday. We have the 100-point Clash at the Troll Cave in England. We have the Ho Ho Horus in Essex, United Kingdom. The Seasons Beatings at Warner Robins in Georgia, United States. We have the Iowa Cadre Clash at First Turn Games in Iowa. And we have Austin North Tournament. That is the Game Castle in Austin. That's also on the 14th. December Steamroller at Comet Quest in California. And that's all for the 13th and the 14th, which is the next upcoming that we're looking at. So now we're going to look at news from Steamforged.
Just want to take a real quick break
Yeah.
there. So just to clarify, I
Yeah.
don't think none of those events are for this upcoming weekend. They're all for the following weekend.
They're the 13th and the 14th of December. That's not this upcoming weekend.
Right. And as much as, unfortunately, I would love to go to that Winter Argus, which is near us, but I'm going to be out of town.
Yeah, you're going back home, right?
Right. I'm definitely a Florida man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, yeah. Unfortunately, I will not be able to participate in that Winter Argus event. My understanding is that they are giving a Winter Argus to all the participants. Or do I have that wrong? Or are we all playing? Are they all playing for a Winter Argus? I don't recall.
You're asking me questions that I almost certainly would
don't
not
know
remember.
the answer. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
It seems like a great event. I would love to go there and get a Winter Argus, but I'll be out of town, unfortunately. Back to Steamroller or Steamforge news, if there is any.
Yeah, Steamforge news. I mean, I don't know if it was covered, but we have this wonderful, wonderful Shadow Tongue coming. The Death Domain, the Crix-themed troll. My favorite of the Bright Bloods Warlocks, Shadow Tongue. That's going to be for the next mini crate. And they also dropped the STLs today. Well, not today, yesterday. They dropped the STLs for the 3D printing stuff, which included the Vulcan, and they also had the Strike Reavers and Dominator come out, which I know we had talked about the Strike Reavers before for Orgoth, and now they have Strike Reavers for Dark Operations. That's one of the units that they've dominated and brought into the faction as available. They're 10 points as opposed to the normal 8, but they come with Dominator. I thought they normally had tough, but the unit leader, the Dominator, gives them tough and inspiration as well as having the influence spell. It's pretty normal cephalic stuff. But still, we have the great hand cannon shield wall guys. I mean, I think they're a good unit in general. I would have to actually sit down and break down and see whether I would end up taking them if I play Dark Operations. Not that I necessarily would.
Dark
There's no
Operations.
Asphyxious there. Dark Operations. I would absolutely play Dark Host. Dark Operations, a little different. Dark Operations, there's no more Asphyxious there. I like the Cephalics, but no Asphyxious. Not for me. Okay, so I think that's most of the announcements. Do we want to go ahead and go on to our next topic, or do you want?
Yeah, let's go ahead and go on to the next topic, which we have here is both of us are new, air quotes, returning players to Mark IV, and I thought it would be nice to have a little bit of conversation about our experience coming back into War Machine from previously just mostly playing a Mark II. I played a couple.
Yeah,
we
played Mark II, played some Mark III, but it was mostly Mark II.
Right.
We played very dedicatedly in Mark II.
What were your impressions when you started coming back into Mark IV? Like, I mean, the rules are I remember when I was playing Mark II, really kind of a little bit hearing, kind of keeping up with things in Mark III about the unit movement, about different aspects of the game that were going to be changing in Mark IV, and not knowing really how I was going to feel about that sort of thing going into the future. Can you share some of your thoughts about what your thoughts about it and your experience bringing back into the game with some of the new rules?
So in Mark III, and I'll start there, we had already had like a power up and everything coming in. And here's the relevancy here. The relevancy is that in Mark II and in Mark III, and all the times that I've played, I play a lot of infantry machine. And my expectations in terms of looking at everything and even understanding that they did a lot to try to like bring down the power of infantry, is that infantry is still very strong because um, it's hard for infantry not to be strong once you get over certain pals. And I was very much okay, I want a certain amount of force versus defensive capabilities.
Right.
So
Well,
whatever the defensive capabilities in the game are, I wanted to do that. The issue I ran into when I actually started playing games was, for one of the things that was a positive was, oh, I love the unit rules for all the crazy stuff you can do with the unit rules. Um, in terms of just like the placements and stuff like that. And that's very fun. Also, the time crunch that I kind of feel with all of those units. And I know that that's not just Rust, there's just a different impetus in the game. So, where, I played a lot of attrition before. That didn't feel like that was doing as well for me when I was getting into things. That didn't feel like it was the correct strategy to go for. Also, volume, quantity was less important than quality.
let me talk. I wanted to kind of touch some base on some of the things you said there about the infantry, because
Yeah,
both
go
of us,
ahead.
both of us playing in Mark 2 and 3, like I've got two full units of precursor sitting
Yeah.
coffee table right now, fully painted, because I was playing them on Mark 3, and like going from that 12-man unit down to a 5-man unit for the most part is a
Hmm.
huge difference in time to activation and time to move, and especially when you combine that with you're moving one model and then placing everything else within two, like it really impacts how quickly you can move the models and also like make their attacks. And I think that's a huge impact for both the old and new players, because there's a lot of finesse in Mark II, um, on infantry, moving your infantry models, depending on whether or not you had to face the opponent's AOE attacks and or spray attacks, depending on what they were bringing to the game. And we've had multiple conversations between us, probably also on the Gunbunnies podcast, about
Way
how
back in the day. Yeah.
In Mark II, if your opponent was bringing AOEs, you had to kind of like do like a cloud formation where you just had to keep them all
Hmm.
kind of spread out from each other. But if your opponent was bringing sprays,
You had the
because
U.
yeah,
You
you
had
had
the
to do the
U.
U. You had to do the U, so the opponent could never really get more than two.
More than two. Yeah.
Yeah, in the spray template, if you all know what the spray template was, kind of like a very long wedge, and it could be
Yeah.
very difficult to determine who was being hit by it, etc. Which I'm really happy with the way that they've cleaned up some of that stuff that makes the gameplay much quicker, and I think that lowers the barrier of entry, because now people that are previously taking an hour and a half, 3 hours to play a game, now taking 2 hours to play a game effectively, and that's a huge barrier of entry lowering, because now the time required is so much less. You can get a couple of games in a much shorter time frame. It allows tournaments to be a lot easier to manage in terms of time and ability for people to get there and play in them, all for that reason. So and the units going from 12 to 5, or in some cases 6, I feel like is
Hmm.
huge. And uh it's just incredible how much quicker you can deploy and move them and make their attacks, like I already mentioned. So I I found that to be, my concern was that the 5-mans, that you're gonna lose a lot of power, like you were getting ready to talk about, and how you're determining whether these units are going to be worthwhile. So
Hmm.
that doesn't seem like it was the case. The other concern that I had with the new blast rules, both mitigating stealth as a viable defense mechanism, because blast always still hits the first model, even with the blast
Hmm.
damage, or if it's only with even with if it's only with the blast damage. I was expecting that blast was going to just clean up whole units at a time, and especially because I'm playing uh for first army, I'm playing Gravediggers. Most of our defensive stats are like 13-13. So I
Hmm.
mean, even blast 8 sixes kill. Sixes like give tough checks, right? Which on
Yeah.
2 dice is not that difficult. So I'm thinking I'm getting three tough checks probably in a turn with the new blast rules. It hasn't really turned out to be that way though, and I've also noticed that like some of the infantry have a pretty high armor, so they're pretty resilient to blast, which is not what I expected. I really expected
Hmm.
blast to be a huge impact on the infantry, and it really just has not been so far. Is at least that's my experience. I'll let you take over for a while and give me your thoughts on it.
Okay. In terms of the the impact of blast, the
And spray.
impact of blast. Well, yes, blast and spray. Sprays are worse than they used to be, and blast is better. Is what I've seen. Um, Sprays, that template was really good in terms of manipulating where a shot went, ignored a lot of rules. Blast, unit formations could make a blast useless. It could really make blast useless unless you played around that fact and kind of knew how. Whereas now it's more like you don't have that barrier the same way because you can like it's going to hit a certain number of models. It's a very quick resolution. Um, and though I do question what Blast is really dealing with, because it feels like it would be dealing with single wounds, so it would be dealing with infantry like yours, which are like 13/13s. Um, and like for when I have like angels, it's dealing with those. And for heavy infantry, which is very popular, I think probably because Blast doesn't really doesn't really do anything to heavy infantry.
Right. And it doesn't even really
Yeah.
do anything to light infantry or single wound infantry a lot of times as well. I kind of wonder if that's something that might be adjusted in January. The blast numbers coming up, or maybe we start seeing a different kind of blast where it's got like the blast has puncture rules so that what it's designed to deal with, and then maybe other blast is like POW 10 or POW 12 blast or something like that that's more designed to deal with heavy or maybe just boosted blast damage, especially with some of the prevalence of blast resistance really making blast even worse than it already kind of is.
Well, I think it also depends on what you're actually trying to hit because I don't think blast damage necessarily coming up, you know, fixes biggest problem children, but we also kind of have to see how everything is gonna change. Another expectation to reality change. Oh yeah, blast 10, but yeah, most blast is like 6 or 8. It's true. I using reflex servitors and dark shroud, I can get some pretty good blasts, but those aren't kind of what we're talking about. Um, so let me see. The other part about blast and why I think I don't know if it'll be affected yet. But it is another change. The other change that I did not expect is how frequently the rules change. I love that we basically get patches. I love that. If something is off, we can fix it. We're not wondering, okay, when is something going to get a change? We're not worried about that. Yeah.
Back in Mark II, yeah, because we only got rules changes like twice a year, maybe quarterly.
It was like twice a year,
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah. Maybe quarterly. Maybe. But like this can happen more often once there's a problem. Things can be adjusted, things can be looked at, and we have a lot better data collection than we did.
Well, right. And
Which,
I think
yeah.
what was one of the really great things was the War Machine app didn't come out in Mark until after Mark II had already started. And
Hmm.
I don't think that Privateer Press really understood the impact that the app could have for the game. And they
Hmm.
didn't, unfortunately, I don't think they designed it well enough to be as adaptable as the current app. That in the day and age of gaming that we are involved in now, like the expectation is that rules balances and rules changes, just like in video games, can happen very quickly. And that really wasn't a thing because, I mean, obviously, War Machine was designed kind of to be a competitor with Warhammer. And in a lot of ways, War Machine was very cutting edge and is still very cutting edge on a lot of the rules. And they really pushed the competitive aspect of the wargaming in a way that Warhammer never did or has chosen not to. And I think that's one of the really strong things about War Machine. And I'm not really trying to give any flack to PP, but I will give credit to Steamforge about really being able to take advantage of the app. And I think that PP did a great job in instituting the app. And I think it really was a beloved thing uh, by the community, and I think it is going to continue to be that, and a great opportunity for Steamforge to make extra sales on just the different models, talking about the different subscription levels, and even really just being able to have it just to make as many lists as you like. But sorry, I digressed a little bit there, but
Yeah. So I did not play in the lists being very similar, so I knew that there was a large deviation in terms of, okay, we are now very strictly having very specific armies happening.
I think that
So
was great.
that I also agree that that is great. Something that kind of goes along with that though is I'm like, I don't know if I'm really getting a rotation, right? A
Yeah,
rotation of casters for say legacy. But
that's a great question. I haven't been playing long enough to know, but like, do they
yeah,
rotate
neither am I.
the legacy casters? Does anybody chat? Jay Beatnik, do you know? Do they rotate the legacy casters every year to kind of keep it fresh, or is it always the same three or so in the thing? So if somebody in chat could maybe help us out with that, because I'm
But
very interested in that.
that being said, yeah, coming to it and looking at legacy factions, because having old models and stuff like that, and being like, oh, okay, um, always the same legacy casters. Okay, excellent, excellent. Yeah, so that is interesting then, because one of the things that I saw, of course, was okay, these are the casters we have. And it told me very specific things about the game. And I'm very snobby about casters. So when I looked at the game, I was like, okay, I'm going to see what casters are available and what casters look like for new factions. I saw Spell Rack. I thought Spell Rack was interesting, but it's going away, which but I agree with. But so,
I think Spell Rack was a great idea in the implementation of Mark IV, where they didn't have a lot of casters in each of the factions. It allowed you to be flexible with the spells that they probably intended to have across the
mhm,
faction, but hadn't had enough casters released yet to really have those spells fixed to casters yet. Now that the game has matured a little bit in Mark IV, and every faction has 4 to 6 casters, I think the need and the for having the spell rack is gone, because now it becomes a game balance issue where everybody can have the same very impactful 3 or 4 spells as needed, and it makes it difficult to keep them out. It makes it difficult for the developers to keep the models to be played as intended.
mhm. So yeah, I was looking at legacy factions when I came back, compared them to new casters. I very much like caster centric armies. And oh, there's nothing.
I agree. I would love to see a caster rotation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would also, yeah, they. I agree. I think Steam Forge really, we have the tools. Like, go out there and make mistakes, and if it's wrong, you have an opportunity to fix it. I mean, but we don't know what the limits are until we test them, right? So, I agree. Like, go out there, make some changes, maybe do the wrong things. Look, it's not like we don't already have overpowered casters, right? So, you know,
Well, that's what I was getting ready to go on. I actually don't think we have a lot of overpowered casters. I think we have overpowered casters for power level now, but not the power level back then.
right. Yeah.
Casters are just a different power level than they were. You look at feats and you see that. And feats, well, they
Are you
can.
saying that the old casters had a power level over 9,000 and the new ones don't?
It depends on the caster. We're not all Haley too, but it depends on the caster. Um, so
Are you
yeah.
talking about Denegra Haley or Haley Haley?
Oh, I'm talking about Haley,
Oh,
but we can also talk about Asphyxious in there too. Asphyxious too. But for for casters coming back, I looked at the casters and I was like, okay, what do I like in casters? Because I also looked at spell lists and how spell lists synergize with different strategies and different questions. And I had seen, okay, I had was like, okay, so questions. It seems like there's a lot of access to POW and factions and trying to look at armor swings. And um, there's a lot more spell ward now than there used to be. So debuffs are right out. Which I know this isn't really news for a lot of people playing right now. But whew, yeah, I know, right? Dark Ops stuck with three casters. No, that's super sad. That's super sad. And you lost and lost pistol rates too, if I remember correctly. Once all the new stuff started coming out. So I had Dark Host. And I was like, well, the rules. Like looking at Dark Host, I very much like Dark Host. Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But I was like, okay, let me try some newer stuff. I'm looking at Dark Host. My options for infantry are Banes. I've got the Banes option. Okay, well, that's not as varied as it was, but it's kind of like the theme forces and the theme armies and stuff like that. Like when they broke those down. Yeah, yeah. A Dark Ops Colossal. It would have like 72 boxes, right? It would be like Gargalash has 72 boxes. They'd have 72 boxes because 36, 36, 72. Um,
I was going to say, to your point about talking about things that have spell ward. I was also, because I noticed this because I play a shooty army. They also have access to Cloud Wall. There's a lot of models that also have Eyeless Sight, which is a little odd to me. It used to be a very niche thing, if you could see through clouds, and now it's just like everywhere. Or it's in a lot of models that the community or the War Machine community has access to. Like Big Pig has Eyeless Sight for some reason. I kind of expect Eyeless Sight to be in the air quotes Legion armies, right? Because that they've always had it. It's just in kind of random armies on random models that you wouldn't necessarily expect it theme wise, if that makes sense.
well, guidance is fairly ubiquitous. Not entirely, but it's not uncommon that you have a solo that can give out eyeless and magical weapons. So you can at very least get those pieces. But on the other hand, that still doesn't do anything for the spamming of stealth as much. Because you can only hit so many targets with a guidance thing so many times. You can only do that so much when you have stealth things running your way. So if you're doing stealth spam for either something like heavies or infantry, Yeah, it's gonna be there's gonna be some matchups where that's still good. That's still a good strategy.
I mean, how
Uh,
viable is stealth spam in the newer armies? I know like Banes and such have a lot of that, and the older Mark II armies, there's definitely a lot of not a lot, but there's some infantry units that you can spam that have the stealth. Um,
mhm.
but I don't know if that's necessarily true in the newer armies. You've done a much deeper dive into the different factions than I
A
have.
much
I
deeper.
really rely on you heavily for a lot of knowledge in this game, which is, I have to give you so much credit for any success that I have, because without the conversations that we have about not only this show but other things that we listen to and
Uh-huh.
watch, that it's hard not to just give you that credit.
So, in terms of stealth spam access, so in Kalis, you can get it with Jax pretty easily. Um, with Dusk, Dusk can get it with Hazarath, um, and with Shadowmancer. Uh, for the infantry, though, because yeah, they do not have occultation in this bow. But mage hunters don't even. They have like prowl. Yeah, they have prowl. Uh, they have prowl. Prowl's a lot more common than just straight up stealth. Straight up stealth models you'll see in like some single wing infantry, like in Chimera, like
Just a quick aside, I
in
think it's
Shadowplane.
very funny. It's like you're like, okay, I got these prowl models, and there's so much terrain, right? Like you can always like hide in a forest or a cloud or something, except for that, with the terrain rules, it's like that cloud is likely to either be on fire or,
Yeah.
poisonous or something like that. And it's like, well,
Hmm.
can I stick my prowl model, my single wound prowl models into this on fire forest, like to gain stealth? It's like, a little scornergy, as it will, or, but anyways.
I think it's just it is a less costed rule because it's like you're getting the value of you can have this rule situationally. Yeah. Uh, you see Jay Beatnik's comments
Most armies have answers in AoEs and good melee. Yeah, I put.
and the previous few comments. Yeah,
Yeah, I put them.
yeah. Oh, you put them up there. Here I am checking out stuff. You're putting them up there. Okay. I don't know
Look,
how this machine runs.
look. I already said it. You're the star here. I'm just pushing the buttons.
You're just pushing the buttons. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, good melee and AoEs being a good answer to single wounds. I would say though, for Shadow of Retribution, what armors are we looking at? Because is there any infantry with stealth spam in new armies that has significant armor backing them up? Um, and what would that armor need to even be?
I mean, as we said already, like,
Armor 11, yeah, Armor 11 is just dead.
yeah,
Yeah, you're just dead. Whereas Banes are like 16s, but I don't think they don't make them like they used to in terms of the stealth spam accessibility.
yeah, but even back
Uh,
here with Jay Beatnik, like a lot of blast is 6 or 8, which makes it kind of useless even on single wounds. Like even armor 13, I found is actually relatively reliable. I mean, I have toughed some rolls, so armor 13 plus tough like has been relatively reliable at keeping my models alive. I feel like blast is kind of underpowered currently. Not that I mean, obviously my army is going to be the first one to die, but like, yeah,
mhm.
you probably don't even need much more. Like Old Umbre has their 5 point single wound infantry. They're like 12/16s. Like they're pretty much immune to blast damage. They don't even need to be blast resistant, right? Like you need an 11 on POW 6 blast damage to kill them, right? Like, and even POW 8, you still need, 9s, right? Which is still pretty reliably, survivable.
So all right, stealth spam there. There is some incorporeal in
And
New
we have
Crypt.
a wild Cosma.
We have a wild Cosma.
It's a good thing he doesn't know how much we've already thrown him under the bus.
What?
I'm
We've
kidding.
already talked about it. Okay, so for other things, so okay, so other things. A lot of my focus, I will admit, has been on looking at legacy factions because, like I had said earlier, I very much am a very big judge on feats and stuff like that. I think I've dipped my toe into a few factions, but into a few factions that I've looked at and been like, do I want to play this faction? This faction looks really good. I think, of course, Old Umbre looks amazing, and is an amazing looking army. Also, I love vampire elves. Vampires and elves, very good call. Um, and I couldn't help but like Chimera because of its. I started in Legion. Back in Mark One. I started in Legion, so I'm very much enjoy all the dragony aesthetics. And not only am I in Legion, the main army I play at this point is Convergence.
You want to talk about some
So
awesome blast damage? You want to talk about dealing with some stealth spam? Cass has cracked the code on it.
What
Get
with
you
my
some
servitors? I didn't
Oh yeah, you
crack
get
the
you some
code.
servitors,
It
some
is
charging,
wisdom amongst Convergence
blast damage.
players,
It's ridiculous.
all 15 of us worldwide. We know. But yeah, you get some servitors. You get some blast damage. Yeah, you can get it that way. You just charge them in. Actually, that's an interesting expectation versus reality because I, quote unquote, you said I cracked that code, and they're a model that I'm still figuring out really how I want to use it. Because having a model left over, clearing the model for my opponent is a significant downside. Oh yeah, the giant laser is wonderful. I had my second TEP arrive last week. I've already been playing my first TEP, and yeah, I have a second TEP now. I'm excited based on a conversation when we went to Bazooka with
Kevin, I think.
Kevin.
Yeah.
Kevin, that I'm going to try a second TEP with Orion. Because we talked about casters and who I thought best caster in Convergence was. Um, and what the best pairs were and things like that for Convergence. Um, so,
Yeah, I was kind of wanting to get to that subject. Like, how has your expectations, kind of like coming from Mark III? I'm not sure if you look a little frozen on my screen. I'm not sure if that's you or me.
that's
I'm
me.
gonna wait for this to catch up. Okay. So I was kind of wondering, like, how have your
Is it
expectations,
working out?
like, yeah, you're still frozen on my screen. How have your expectations, like, hit the reality of actual play? Like, it's one thing to sit in the bathroom and dream up some lists where your Rube Goldberg machine comes together perfectly and all the charges line up and you kill their caster, or you force them out on scenario. But when the rubber, it looks like we lost Cass, so let's give it to them. I'll just digress into some of my expectations coming into from Mark III and Mark IV, which was, I was a former Signar player, which I then was playing some Morrowind and Mark III, playing the striker, the strikers with some other crazy stuff, but it doesn't really matter. The important thing is I was playing Signar, and I played some Storm and some Siege and Cray. And when I was looking at coming back into Mark IV, I kind of mostly liked Siege and Cray, and I was looking for who kind of fit that the best. And I felt like Gravediggers was kind of what I was
All
what I
right.
was going to go into. But for those reasons, because I mostly ended up kind of playing, like Cass had touched on this point earlier, that some of the armies more than others kind of already felt like two factions. I already kind of felt like that in Signar, where you kind of had the Storm Legion, and you had the kind of like the Trenchers and the Trencher Commandos and the Rangers, and kind of Cray Siege, and some of those other people kind of felt like more like Trencher models, First Army, and versus kind of like the Storm Legion. And kind of my expectations about it were kind of mixed. I wasn't sure about how to feel about the unit movement. It's very the thing that really actually kind of throws me about Mark IV that I'm very used to in Mark II is it's very difficult to prevent your models from being charged, because only one model kind of has to have a lane, and it has to be unengaged but have a lane. And if one model makes it, they kind of all make it. And while if they are engaged, they don't get to make the attacks, or you can't kind of like charge without losing them. But it's just very difficult to keep your pieces alive. You can't like screen them like you used to. And the only kind of way to screen them now is to like run at them and engage everything up and kind of try to see if you can prevent them from being easily cleared, in order to prevent your models from being charged. Or the only other way is to ask your opponent what their charge range is and just park them slightly outside. So that's kind of the thing that I didn't expect to be an issue. It's like, I guess you can't really expect to have like beautiful positions and setting up 5-man units so easily and quickly, and then also still have all the fun toys of jamming and getting jammed and preventing unit charges at the same time. They're kind of diametrically opposed, right? Yep. Because yes, it is. Repo is a great rule, and I was very disappointed to find out that while the character unit for Gravediggers has Repo 3, which is apparently enough to get out of a cloud wall, Repo 2 is not. So the commandos cannot get out of their own cloud wall, which is a little frustrating. But maybe some January changes will fix that. I don't know, because commandos don't really see play. But that's a digression of a different kind. But yeah, I do love the unit movement for the most part, but I don't know what rules could be done if they're even a question about how to deal with protecting your models from your opponent just killing them. But that's really what I had. Sorry, Cass.
Okay. Yeah, no problem, no problem. So yeah, this was about where my expectations were once I actually played the game.
The game is a lot more dynamic, and
More
there's
dynamic.
a
Yeah.
lot of changes, not just the unit changes, that I think have really contributed to that. I mean, I think part of it too is the elimination of those gigantic zones, which just made it give you the illusion that you had an opportunity to win on scenario. Right? Where now the zones are so much smaller because they're objectives and or flag scenario pieces. And I think that really, like, the ability to score is so much more available. And that definitely makes the game more dynamic. You really have to pay attention to what's going on in the game now. Like, everything is so much more live. And I really appreciate that. I think that's one of the things I really like about the game right now. The unit movement is fantastic. I'm not trying to take too much away from it, but I kind of wish I just I don't like losing models. Who does, right? And I'm not sure what the
I
well, maybe
I
you
love
like
losing models. I love losing models.
well,
That's just
I'll
fine.
tell you.
That's just fine with me. Um, which is kind of foreshadowing to a future topic for this episode. But
If we get there
um, if not, in the future,
in the future,
um, in the future,
if Alex lets us back on.
yeah, this is true. Uh, yeah. So the clock does feel different now.
Well, do we want to move on and talking about
Well, we were talking about my expectations.
okay.
So this may be a good segue to talk about those how you win the game, how you play the game, how the game plays is a very different game.
I'm going to interrupt you real quick just to address JB
Yeah.
next comment here. Uh, you know, oh, never mind. I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, I was going to say the great thing about kind of me being on here is I'm so focused on the chat behind the scenes that like I feel like I have to be more interactive with the chat, and there's a lot of times I put things up, unfortunately, that sometimes that the people don't want to address, so they just ends up sitting there. But it is what it is. Uh, but I know they've got the things that they need to talk about, so I'm not trying to throw them under the bus or anything like that.
No,
I love
absolutely not.
interacting with the chat, and I feel like it's a great thing because I want to reward people for being on the show with us, and I want to make sure that your voices are heard. So,
Yeah. So
yeah, I know, Cosmo. Well, I took it from you, and I did come up with an outline, as you saw. I shared it in our chat there. So is not as beautiful as yours, but it was what I had for the time. Anyway, sorry, Cass. Getting back on the rails.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Getting back on the rails. In terms of expectations, and I think that this will always change as well as we get more steamrollers, which is how the game is won and what is important from a tournament competitive perspective. I think that's what I came into it. Of course, I had not the best assumptions because I was coming from a very different era, a very different strength, like very different way that the game was played, very different like setup to the way even tournaments are run in some ways, and that is to say, it's a different game. It's super fun. It's great, and I love it. And I love all the changes, and I love all the dynamics. And there's not really a but coming here. I think the only but coming here is that I had to, and I'm still learning how to play this version of the game in terms of the meta game, the game inside the game. Uh, and what it looks like in terms of the differences of scenario, the clock, and
Assassination.
assassination, and how that looks so much different than it used to me. So yeah. Um,
Well, like, what's your experience like so far? Like, compared to Mark II, like, how do you feel like scenario victory is in from Mark II 3 compared to Mark IV? Like, how do you feel about scenario?
so how I feel about scenario is that I think scenario is very live. I also think you have a very strong onus on you to complete the game via scenario. You may use the other elements in the game to win by scenario, but you should be focusing on winning by scenario. Like that is just the truth of it. You have to focus on, and the way that this works now as opposed to back then is back then you would like flood the zone or something like that. Like you had enough volume to where as this is an old like magic term of math is for blockers. So playing old cricks, you would just shove as many mechanic rolls down somebody's throat as possible and be like, okay, you got to clear these models. And there were so many models, and then there was more threats behind them. That it was you have to clear this to get into the zone to play the game. And now there's less models, so you have to be a lot more specific on how you do that. And given the turn limits as well, you're observing what is the most you can get out of your pieces in terms of for scenario. How do I have to use this piece for scenario? And how is this going to help me win my scenario game? What is this? What is this piece's role in my list? Because of the changes, solos are a very specific scenario spot. They do like caches and they do flags, but they are not animals in the 40 and 50 millimeter game. They are just contesters. They're not real contenders for those places. So then, okay, so you want to a certain extent, you like the freedom of movement of solos, but you want to have pieces that can continuously, once you lose the first bunch of, say, a unit, you want to have another unit, even if it's a support unit, to hold down a zone once you've cleared it. Or those 50 millimeters, those you want those war beasts or those warjacks, or if you have them, those battle engines to cover that. You can also put your leader model there, but a lot of things kill in this game. So you have to be very conscientious of when you put your caster out there, even though it actually feels like in the grand meta game, someone going for an assassination is a bad call. It feels like it will hurt your strength of schedule overall. And we'll get to this more in the assassination section, but yeah, I think your point for scenario is key, and you should be trying to win by scenario.
Yeah.
You can play those other games, but those other games are to enable you to better set up your victory.
Yeah, I kind of want to echo some of the things that you said, especially back on Mark II. There were so many models, like I mentioned before. When you're bringing 3 or 4 or 5 units of 12-man units, you're talking 40 or 50 models right there, and you're just shoving them all in the zone, or you're setting yourself up, like you said, with thralls to take the initial brunt, and then your banes to clean up anything that deals with your thralls or your chafe units. At least in my faction, I don't really have a tar pit, as it were, unit that can stand in front of my models just to kind of allow them to set themselves up for the counter for the trades. And I think with the unit sizes being so much smaller, it does kind of two things. One, it makes it a lot harder to have that chaff unit, because because blocking the charge lanes is so much more difficult with a 5-man unit. And the other thing too is, like, it makes jacks a lot more powerful now. Instead of a jack needing to clear 10 men to kind of make its points, right? Or maybe even 2 groups of 10 men if they're like really inexpensive infantry to make its points back. Now it really kind of only has to kill like 7 or so, or maybe 5, a full unit and maybe an inexpensive solo or something like that. And that kind of makes you feel like the jack to unit disparity is not so bad as it was in Mark II. Kind of going back to what you said also for scenario presence, when you're designing your list as a metagame choice, I really like what you said. The solos, like in Mark II, you had like whole lists of practically just solos. Like, there was a time when there was a list design called MSU, which is small unit, multiple unit activations, or something similar to that, where you just wanted to have a lot of very independent small groups of people that had a very impactful effect on the game. Now, if you do that, the only thing you're going to be able to score is scenario terrain, if the scenario even has it. Whereas you're required to have cohort models, battle engines to score the 50s, and or units to score the 40s. And your caster obviously can score anything, but when you're designing your list for scenario, you really need to be able to figure out what is it you're going to be using to score these 40s and 50s. And for me, like, what I've found is really much better than I ever expected to be was my empower unit. I use my empower unit so often just to score 40s, because the 6-inch, you got 3 inches off the base plus another 6 inches for empower, and you can usually get all your guys empowered just fine, being and still either contesting or controlling the zone. I really didn't expect that. And the smaller units, like a two-man unit, still score. A one-man unit, if you lose all your units, all your models in your unit except for one, it still counts as the whole unit for scoring purposes. Was fantastic. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Yeah. That it is that I was going to say you should also be considering, when you're building lists, if you're really trying to be competitive, you should consider what you're going to be fighting. If you're going for a 40 millimeter and 40 millimeters are on the opponent's side of the board, typically you're dealing with them on your side of the board, but it could be even. What are you fighting mostly with this unit? What is this unit fighting? Do you have a backup unit to go in that? If you're bringing a jack or a heavy, what is it fighting? Now, this is where ranged weapons come in and go, well, I can contribute to potentially both kinds of zones. And sometimes I think they do the corners where it's opposite. So you have 40s and 50s facing each other. I believe there's a scenario like that, correct? I believe
I'm
so.
not looking at the scenarios, and I'm not familiar enough with them. I will take your word for it. I think kind of like a trench warfare kind of scenario is
Yeah.
what you're thinking of.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. So when you're looking at that, you're trying to figure out what you're fighting and what is the best thing for you to be using in your faction to fight those things. Or are you going to give them an escort of either a unit or a warjack that is going to help clear that kind of thing that they're going to have to typically be fighting? So yeah, that's my thought process on when I'm building lists, when I'm thinking about what I'm facing, is that for scenario, I'm thinking very heavily about scenario and towards like what pieces I'm taking. So here's the thing. In Convergence, I don't like a lot of my heavy warjacks. So I have to consider what I have to do to score those 50s.
It's a good thing you got a tap.
Well, it's a good thing I got a tap. But a tep running up there and fighting a heavy in melee, like I have to have something to fight that. So I bring friends to fight it. I use Tep, I use Nemo, and I use juniors. I use other juniors besides Nemo
Wait.
to bring.
And is Nebo considered a battle engine for scoring?
Yes, he's a battle engine.
That's ridiculous. That guy's already crazy.
He's a battle engine. I don't know. So but I've used Asphyxius as a piece that he has low warjack with him, but he is what I fight heavies with. Like
Nothing is better than Teps. 2 Teps is best. But if you only have one, the answer is bring it. Always bring it. Teps are like crazy. I mean, Cassidy might disagree with me, but and Cassidy does play the faction, so she would know better than I would. But sorry.
In terms of my opinion about Tep, I love the Tep. It's always fun to put on the table, and I always like how it contributes, even if it's not. I have lists that it's not always the I'm going to get my points back, but it's always going to engineer situations to get my points back, even if it can't get its points back.
Right. Yeah. Let
Um,
me take a real quick second to address what Cosma said here, or as I'd like to say, correct Cosma here, because he's talking. We're talking about MSU, and module is not the same as MSU. A module would include things such as units and or cohort models that you're using to score. So I would not consider MSU the same as a module. MSU is typically solos, maybe a small unit like an Ion on Holt back in the day, where that was, I believe, a unit. But we're talking, I think for MSU, it was more like a bunch of solos. Whereas a module is
yes,
like,
but it was also a 40K term.
right,
But when
yeah,
it was used in War Machine, it was a bunch of solos and a bunch of tiny units.
right.
But yeah. So let me see. So that's my opinion on scenario. I think the scenarios are live. I think you should be thinking about how you play in scenarios. And yeah, I love Solo Machine, to be honest with you. Like, I love nothing more than to show up with a bunch of pistol wraiths and shoot people up with pistol wraiths.
Let,
I loved it.
I'd like to make a short digression here on
Yeah.
Solo Machine. So thank you, Jay Beatnik. I thought I was a good Signar player when I was playing in Mark II, and I went to an event. I went to a lot of events. I traveled a lot because we had the podcast, and I felt obligated to go to them for content, partially, and also because meeting people and everything like that. But I went to an event. I thought I was a pretty good solo. I mean, I never won any of the big events. I won several of our local events. Um, I thought I was a pretty good Signar player until one day I played against Trevi the Great. I felt like the worst Signar player after I played against him. He was so insanely clean, insanely precise. He knew exactly how to do everything. I felt like such a new player after playing him. It was incredible. It was a very a very humbling experience. And he was playing Solo Machine, and he was playing Haley too, and all the solos with Stormwall, and he just absolutely crushed me. It wasn't even close. It wasn't even close. I learned so much that day. It was great for the learning, but it definitely put me in my place. I thought it was an incredible experience. And that's one of the things I love about War Machine is you can lose a game and feel awesome about it.
Yes. Uh, so, yeah. Um, I'm trying to think about other scenario things. Or do you want to move on to
Well,
the
I'm gonna weigh
other?
in on scenarios here. Like I said, mentioned earlier, I feel like scenarios are significantly more live because they're smaller. Um, I definitely, like you said, I definitely agree because they're live and they are. Man, I'll tell you one thing that is not expected, and I know this caught you off guard too, was that in previous editions of the game Mark II and Mark III, you had to be up on scenario by 5, but on your turn. And when I told Cass that in a game, I think we were playing a game that you have to be up by 3 on your opponent's turn. That definitely, as I recall, caught you a little bit off guard because you were going to make a really good play that
Uh
would
huh.
have won you if you had to be up by 3 on your turn. Um, and it was a very good play, which was I think they were going. She was going to send in
It was
asphyxious.
Gators, right? Or
Uh,
no, no, no. It was
it was
Convergence. You're right.
yeah, it was convergence. Yeah, you were going to send
It
in
was
asphyxious and
Asphyxious.
kill a bunch of models, contest me in a particular place, and try to score out some other spots,
Yeah.
which would have put you up by more than 3, I think. But then I would have still gotten a chance to go. So there's one thing to be aware of if you're a returning player, that you have to be up by 3 on your opponent after your opponent has another chance to score or kind of even things up. Um,
Or another way to say, don't be like me read the entire steamroller package and understand. Don't assume you know anything. Just read it. Because I was like, excuse me, what? Oh, okay, yeah. I read a lot of this packet and that did not click to me.
And I mean, you can be like me. I choose not to read anything, and I learn it the hard way. But I try to only learn it once the hard way, which is to fail miserably, trying to do stuff, and then learning that that doesn't work that way. But I'd absolutely intentionally design my list to win on scenario because I think that there is much more winnable than it has been in the past.
Mhm.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's true. It's true. And hey.
Uh,
So yeah, my Jake's list is basically just a beef list. I'm basically just designing it to push you out of scenario. And designing it to have designed it to lose a bunch of heavy or not heavies, but cohort models, if that's what I have to do in order to win on scenario. And like I told one of my opponents, like I won the game. I said, hey, well, I mean, I did win the game, but you got to kill a lot of my models, so hopefully you had fun doing that too, and then I went out and I bought them some drinks, so it was nice for everybody. But yeah.
I think the only thing I'll mention about this, because you said this earlier, and I just want to address this now. So it was about screening models, and you use your lights as your screening models.
Yeah, it's still difficult to do to protect my heavies. Like you kind of have to use like 2 lights to protect a heavy, or maybe you can use 3 lights to protect 2 heavies, right?
Okay, but the consideration I want you to have here, and for any potential listeners to keep an eye on, is next year. If survivability goes up, if you figure out the side of survivability for your faction, then that could be cohort models, that could be infantry that you can use to screen or at least buffer your army if they end up reducing the max enough. Like there'll be breaking points, and finding those breaking points for your faction will be key to playing this game. Because yeah, because if they drop mats and rats of say cohort models, that's gonna do some interesting stuff to the game for how likely a heavy is to kill another heavy, even if it's dropped by a point. I've played Mat 5 heavies before. I know how hard it is to hit another heavy, even if you're even if they have lower defense and you have Mat 5. It's not fun. So yeah. Uh, do we want to go to assassination?
Before we do that, I want to touch on one more thing.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
As a meta consideration for designing your lists and designing for winning on scenario. And this was a thing that you added to the show notes, which I thought was amazing. Which is, this is kind of like, why do you take certain models? Like when you're building your lists, there's certain models and modules that you design into your lists that are going to help you win on scenario. And you're not necessarily, you may have some ideas on this while you're sitting on the can or whatever designing your lists, but once you put it on the table, that kind of changes. There was something that I learned about gravediggers, or the way I'm choosing to play gravediggers, is that I've designed a scenario package on in my Jake's list that really entirely allows me to split very well for scenario, and in very unexpected ways from my opponents. And I think it catches them a lot of times off guard, and it really helps me win on scenario, which is the ability of me to use my Jack Marshalls with heavy airdrops to get a significant force on turn 2 on an objective or a flag. A lot of armies aren't going to have that flexibility, so you really kind of have to like look at your armies and decide what kind of force you're going to need to create as a module to hold down a scenario. If you just put like a unit or a heavy to defend or to contest, I'm going to tell you I'm going to win that side every time. And I think this is kind of what Cosmo's talking about in his previous episode, where he has a module, but it needs a little bit of help. That's why he sent over, I don't remember what the model was that he sent to kind of assist them so he could win that side every time. And that's a very key thing that you want to think about is how are you going to be able to split your army? How are you going to be able to, because the scenarios are good in live, but they're also very, you're not going to really be able to brick up. And I've noticed that a lot of armies tend to want to brick up and be able to activate their Rube Goldberg machine or their synergy machine to really take advantage of all the force that their army can bear, and put it directly into your force and eliminate it. But
Mhm.
if you do that, you can get punished on scenario. So and to that point, and I know we're the gun bunnies and we love our guns, but I feel like that's a trap. Like you really need guns in a list, but I feel like if you have too many guns on a list, it can really be a trap for your forces. And I think you probably might be able to talk a lot better about that than me.
Okay. Well, I kind of want to address I want to talk about that because we had the comics show up and I want to talk about it. So, and I want to go back and talk about what you were just talking about in terms of why we pick models. But so, Matt and Rat from spells as well as damage. So, I think that the way mats and rats should generally look like if you're getting them from spells, and this would bring down power curve, is you try to not give casters army wide control area type buffs. You try to give them very fixed buffs to where it's this unit gets +2 mat and vengeance. That's Death March, right? It's a unit +2 mat, Death March. Carnivores model unit, it gives RFE and it gives +2 mat. Like these are the kinds of things that are more acceptable in terms of your tiers than something like Carnage, which is hitting a lot, or even Insight. But Insight's not in the base rack. Insight's on casters specifically, and it's generally on casters that are very frail because it is an opportunity cost. Insight is always an opportunity cost because your caster could just die because it's in those casters that they have ways of running away. Because I can just think of what is it, Lesnoy and Old Umbre and Veil 1 is the ones that immediately come to mind with that insight. They move forward and they have methodologies to move backwards. But for Matt and Rat, if you reduce it on spells, even just removing a lot of the army wide buffs, that is quite considerable, and you can see where that leads. That being said, you may find casters that are. You could still deal with the power creep by putting some of those buffs on casters that aren't being taken as much, that aren't as successful, because then you can have them in places where it's okay, this caster's not as good as this caster, except they have this, and this can kind of give them a good identity to make them better to take overall. And about the mats and rats, just from the I very much am looking forward to Carnage going away, even though nobody can miss me. I get hit all the time. It's fine though, because that's fine. You kill the models. You don't need Carnage to hit defense 12. 14 maybe. 14 maybe. Uh, but yeah, whether that reduces it enough, PALs are still a consideration though. Because this is something that goes into consideration, and it's a stealth map thing when I'm looking at models in the game and I'm discerning things. And I try to do this for myself because I need something to where I can just look at a model and know exactly what I need to do to kill it. So I use my 25s rule, which is my PAL 25s. And that's how I judge models. I judge models by how many PAL 25s they can take and how many do they deal. And this has been just quick math for me that I can do at a table. And by PAL 25s, I mean after you roll dice, your total base PAL plus, plus your dice is 25. And that's what we're looking for. And if you're under that, then you're doing like percentages.
Quick question for you on that. Are you using 10 or 11 for 3 dice rolls?
I use 11 because it's 10 and a half. I use 11.
If you get a PAL 14 boosted, that's 25. Just as an example.
Yeah. PAL 15 boosted is 25. That's actually a very important thing to mention because PAL 15s on infantry, PAL 15s or PAL 14, I would say PAL 14s on medium infantry. This is what I look at and I go, okay, infantry has PAL 14. It's doing a PAL 25. If you have a 3-man unit, let's say the Criterions that have 2 PAL 14s, when they're not battle driven, they're going to hit like a truck. If they get on heavy, they just rip a heavy off the table a lot of the times. So you're looking for those models. I look for those models that are outliers. I also figure out like, okay, if I look at say an old Devastator. Devastator is one of those great examples of a jack that it has the double shields, so its armor is going to fluctuate. So I know it's going to take anywhere from like 8 to 11 PAL 25s to kill.
That's a lot.
It just depends on your rolls and things like that to whether, but you were talking about an armor 22, 34 box jack that mostly has 2 PAL 16s. So its output isn't as high, but another good example of this specific metric when talking about outliers is, so if we talk about, because you run Engrave Diggers Valiants a lot with your standard kit of like the hammer. You run the hammer Valiant.
Right. I run the cheapest Valiants pretty much that you can. 10s and mostly 11s. That's 1 point higher than the cheapest you can get.
Yeah, so generally speaking, with your aggressive head, you're doing like 5 PAL 25s, right? Valiant is also taking 5 PAL 25s. This is a pretty standard, yeah, 5 and 5. This is with no buffs. This is just what it does. And like, do I think a unit of Criterions kills it? No, they do about 4. Is what my math has for. It's close though, and if they're battle driven, we're talking about a whole new land because we're adding 12 damage if they're battle driven. Because I think it's +2. We're adding 12 damage, which is 2 PAL 25s. Because it's 6 damage.
Right.
An interesting one for you is, let's talk about another very common one, which is the Primeval. Primeval, if it has the corpses, which anybody can argue of how easy it is to get corpses. Well, if you have the corpses to get the +2 damage, you are looking at 8.
Can you be a little more specific about which Primeval we're taking?
Oh, which Primeval we're taking? We're taking the Shield Primeval with the big sword.
Okay.
That's the Primeval we're taking. Shield, big sword, and we want one of the mouths. We don't want the bird head. So we get that additional initial. And it is like almost 9. It's almost 9
PAL 25s.
PAL 25s. And it takes like 6 to kill them. So that tells me, okay, like it's not rocket science to be like, well, Primeval's hard to kill. Well, yeah, but how hard is it to kill compared to other things?
Right.
Like, but yeah, that is what made me go, okay, this is how I have to judge models. Aberration and Distiller are another that have really good math here, but finding a good method for you to quickly identify models and how you can take them out will help you in the scenario. Also will help you in the assassination. let's go to assassination.
Okay.
Okay,
Go.
right?
Yeah.
Assassination. So for assassination, I think that I used to play a lot more assassination.
Right.
In Mark II, I played a lot of assassination. I assassinated a lot of people. And sometimes it was an attrition-based assassination, like Terminus in early Mark II running at someone. I did a lot of running at people in Mark II.
Yeah, you did. And then you transitioned from Terminus running at people to your baby bots.
To my baby bots.
Yeah.
Oh, the Dirt
No.
Dolphins?
Yeah, the Dirt Dodgers.
The Helldivers. Yeah, I played a lot of Helldivers. Like I used Helldivers to put a clock on the game that was very natural, a very natural clock of them burrowing, and eventually they'll kill the caster.
3 turns. Maybe 4.
I don't think it was 3 turns. I don't think it was 3 turns. But it put a clock on the game while we're playing scenario, things like that. So now, in terms of what I feel about assassination, is the first thing I'm going to say is I think casters are easier to kill now than they ever have been.
Have you ever played against Old Hombre?
Old Hombre does not count. I know you're complaining about Guard Dog and all of that.
Guard Dog plus being your own heavy to give you +2 armor because you're your own battle group.
I think you're just complaining about Aslanov.
Well, not just Aslanov, but they're very durable over there.
I mean, that's fair. That's fair. But yeah, so and they've got some casters because they got some casters that don't have great stats either. But with Fury, you're going to be looking at transfers. There's also less models to block your assassination.
Yeah, I would say like the larger based models. When you're talking about your like your Nemo's, I know Nemo's not a full caster, but like your battle engine size caster or 80mm casters or even 50mm casters tend to be a lot more durable because they have more boxes, right? Like they're gonna take a lot more attacks to get through typically, and they generally also are compensated for the base size with better stats or in some way or another, right?
Yeah. I agree with that.
For assassination, I think there's also like certain models that you're definitely looking for to put in your list. I don't really go for assassination myself very often, but I always like to include a few models that really assist in assassination if things go badly for me. And to that regard, I do try to carry a couple of harpoons on my Valiants. Instead of taking the aggressive head, I'll switch that out for the harpoon fist on some of my Valiants because it does 2 really good things. One is if you need to drag a caster into your army for yourself to kill it, you can do that. And also, if you need to pull a model off of a scenario point, if your opponent does not sufficiently contest it, you can just pull it off of there and automatically not have to worry about like even killing it. It's just you're just going to get the you're just going to score even if you don't kill the model because it's automatically out of the zone. So there's definitely certain things like that. Anything with gallows, anything with sort of like a TK or maybe even a hunter's mark that can allow a really deadly model to get to a caster, things that you can really use to include in a list if you're designing for maybe not necessarily strictly assassination, but for assassination potential if things go sideways in the mid to late game, right?
Yeah. You've been playing Kane recently. How has that assassination been? Because I know you played Kane assassination back in the day.
I haven't played enough games with Kane. I've only played 1. He's currently shaping up to be my second list, but I'm designing that list more to to shoot a Colossal off the board, or to telegraph to my opponent that if you put a Colossal on the board, I will either shoot it off with Kane or synergy it off with Jake's, and allows my decision to be kind of a lot easier, in the sense that I'm going to drop a list that's going to be better into their non-Colossal list, if that makes sense. Is kind of the strategy I'm going for there. But Kane, playing Mark II Kane, I've won a lot of games with Assassination with him, when games have gone badly. The Mark IV Kane I had looked at, and I was like, well, he doesn't have the feat that Kane 2 has, but it's a lot better than Kane 1's feat, in my opinion. And I was the little bit of shooting I've done with Kane has surprised me. The Heartseeker is surprisingly better than I thought it would ever be. Unless I'm just doing it wrong, but when you boost and you get to have 4 dice, and
Additional die drop lowest. Yeah.
it's like trip 6s are a lot easier to come by when you're rolling 4 dice, and that definitely makes a difference. He obviously can take advantage of, or at least I think he can take advantage of the ammo crate. If not, then I'm cheating, which is entirely possible because the Gravedigger's rules are kind of funky.
Is he a Gravedigger model?
I don't know. Maybe. I assume that he would be if he's in the faction, but maybe he's not. I mean, Deuce isn't, so maybe he's not either. Although I don't think I've taken any in the one game I played. I don't think I took any ammo crates for Kane. I just Heartseekered and rolled fire because you have additional dice. But yeah, I was surprised at how much damage he can actually put out if he's greedy with his focus. But the problem, of course, with Kane is he's really riding on that edge due to the fact that he's a 17-13. So just like Kane of old, if a stiff breeze hits him, he probably just falls over dead, regardless of focus camp. So the jury's still out. He definitely, I think, has a lot more assassination potential than I originally gave him credit for. But I have yet to do it, so that's kind of my answer.
So for assassination for me, I have 2 major looks at for assassination right now. The one is Aurora 1, just because of her threat range projection is pretty far. She's got aerogenesis every turn. You can aerogenesis up Asphyxious. Like, you can Arcane Might Asphyxious, thing that I've looked at, as well as she herself can get flank and get in there and things like that. I think the most of the way I've used that, though, is I've had a couple games where I've had a diffuser in the list, and what I specifically did was I had the diffuser, I had her, so I have these threat range extenders because diffuser has beacon, and then I just don't go for the assassination. I use the threat of assassination to control my opponent's movement. Like that is what I am using assassination for. To keep my opponent more honest with me. I need you to be more honest with me. So, because it's a common question, beginning of the game, what's your threat ranges? And I'll explain my threat ranges. And somewhere in the beginning portion of the game, I will go, what's your caster's defensive stats?
Using those Jedi mind tricks.
Well, I mean, Asphyxious can throw a Hellfire pretty far. And if someone's been spending stack to do a lot of things, it's like, I mean, even if I lob a shot at you, if I can lob a shot at you and I can get away with it, it's worth taking the shot just to put some damage on you to make you play more defensively. If you're going to give me your caster, I'll take your caster, but I want to win on scenario. But pressuring your caster allows me to win better on scenario. So when I'm building pieces for assassination, it's how do I project threat and how do I project the fear of threat? Whereas the other kind is when you're looking at ranged assassination. And the important part about ranged assassination, I think when you're building a ranged assassination list, is figuring out how you can repurpose that list in the midst of the game, like when you get matched up against opponents, to actually be planning to assassinate support staff.
All right. Well, I got to take a brief segue here into a non sequitur.
Okay.
This happened when we went to Bazooka Games, and Cassidy got paired up against Erica Bev in the second round. And Erica Bev says to Cassidy, "Well, what's Asphyxius do?" I thought in my mind, the first thought I thought, well, Erica, you're about to find out what Asphyxius does because you're about to get dead. Which unfortunately that didn't happen. But like I was thinking Cass was totally going to win that game just because Erica asked the question. Because it's surprising. Like Asphyxius goes 14 inches and has like what 12 focus or something crazy.
I think it's 13 inches.
Yeah, 13. Oh, it's 13 inches. Yeah, and how much focus?
Yeah, 13 inches base before diffuser. Diffuser's like 15.
Yeah, and then you're spending both Aurora and Asphyxius's focus.
3, 2. That's 11 plus the 2. Yeah. Huh? What's that?
I was just asking how many focus. Yeah.
Aurora generally has 3 at that point.
Okay, so 3 and 4, so 7 focus.
7 focus, and you can you can make sure because he has 5 focus base. You get 3 more because of Aurora getting boost hits or boost damages, and you can also lucky penny.
And he flies, so then
he flies.
Don't matter. So you just land next to their caster and like.
And say, you want to shove something in there to have Dark Shroud, like yeah.
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad news.
It's bad. It's bad news.
I almost found out.
But I was playing LeConte, not Aurora. And I don't know how the game would have gone with Aurora. And oh my god, I love my game with Erica though. That was amazing.
Yeah, that's another story for another time.
Another story for another time. That was not assassination. Because that was Hazarath with a wall in front of him. That was. But yeah, so 4 pieces for assassination, and I also think assassination, like it kills your strength of schedule.
I was just about to say that the problem with assassination, and you've mentioned this in the past to me, is it's kind of a trap, right? Like assassination's great in round 3, and in round 1 and 2, you kind of want to avoid it, right?
Well, like if you're cutting after 3 rounds, right? In a lot of events, cutting at 3 rounds. You're going to compare strength of schedule. If you've been assassinating all day, your strength of schedule is probably not going to be great.
Well, because what? Because after SOS, strength of schedule for your opponents, the next thing is control points, right? And so if you're assassinating, or if your plan is to assassinate, your control point number is going to be likely going to be pretty low. Now, obviously, it's better for you to get the win with no control points than it is to take the loss. But it's definitely going to put you in the lower tier of whatever your win-loss ratio is. And if you get paired down, you're probably going to get paired down in the final round, right? So.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's most of my opinion on assassination, because while I used to do it a lot, I've not been doing it recently. Also, the changes to the blasts make certain things less viable because you can't toss out a Scourge and deviate a knockdown onto someone. That's not really a thing you can do.
Not anymore, right? Yeah.
Not anymore. You're not really deviating anything on anybody or anything like that. Do we want to talk about clock?
Absolutely.
Excellent.
There's a lot to talk about for clock. You made some really good. We'll get to that, but yeah, Death Clock is much like, I think in Mark 2 and 3 it was an hour and 15 or an hour and 30 for each person, including setup, or at least I feel like it was. Maybe it was only an hour each, but it seems incomprehensible to me to move 50 models.
I don't think it was an hour. I don't think it
Yeah.
was an hour. It was a little bit more than an hour.
Yeah. And even now, like with the model movements being much more cleaned up, it still takes some time because you also get to pre-measure, and that takes time. And doing your attack and damage rolls, and even the other thing too is like, yeah, you kind of get tricked into, well, I've only got 5 models versus 10, right? But previously, when you were moving 10 models, most of them didn't make it to the target. It's usually only the front few, right? And so you're only making attacks with a few of those 10 or 12, right? And the rest were, you know, surviving to the next round potentially.
Yep.
And now your models have 2 or 3 or more attacks each. So while you have a 5-man unit, when you make 10 attacks with them, up to or more, or if you have a model that has to roll for the number of attacks it gets, that all that stuff takes a lot of time. And you really have to be very mindful of your activations and your choices, I think. And when you're designing lists, you have to think about, okay, well, what kind of models do I want to take based on the time? I think you had a really good conversation with Erica about, or Erica mentioned something to you in the game that you played with her about number of attacks in a round, or something like that. Maybe you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think it has to do with one of the strategies that I have for Death Clock, which is so in LeConte, I bring Nemo. And one of the big things with Nemo that I do is I will shove it down my opponent's throat. I'll shove him down my opponent's throat um, because, and then pot feed. And if I can, I like to delay it a little bit and kind of have him threatening and delay my feet if they can only shoot, have a shield guard nearby. But I like to shove him down people's throats to deal with because he generally eats a lot of clock because he takes a lot of attacks to remove from the board. And generally the opponent is figuring out, okay, how do I look at him and go, okay, how do I actually take him off the board this turn? What do I have to dedicate? How much focus? Because he's generally hanging out near the 50 mils. What will happen is that takes time. Now, the more experienced you are, the more you'll be able to make those quicker decisions. But you're still positioning all those models. You're rolling all those dice. You're chunking away at a full camped Nemo.
And how much armor does he have under feet? Base?
Base. So he's an 18. Under feet, he goes up to 22. And then he has 5 focus to shunt, 5 points of damage each time. So yeah, you have so many boxes. Another way to actually say it is he's about 14 POW 25s
To kill under feet.
to kill on feet. Yeah. And this is without range and decel going on, because that's going on too. So if you're using range decks, it's even worse. So it takes a lot of time consideration. Also, if you're considering, okay, I'm just going to contest with my heavy, and I'll clear out Nemo over a couple times, right?
How do you contest with a heavy when you got a 120 millimeter base sitting in front of the objective, right?
I have done that. Yes. Yeah. Sometimes you can get in that position. Sometimes you can't. Nemo moves stealthily very far because he has his own place. Erica identified very quickly, I can't think about how to deal with this guy, and just ignored him basically for the round and dealt with the other scenario pieces. And that I was like, okay, yeah, that is the correct decision. To look at a piece and be like, no, you're under feet. I'm not dealing with that. You are too hard for me to deal with. It'll destroy too much of my clock.
Right, and that was the
So,
thing that was really surprising to me that she said was she
mhm.
recognized how much time it was gonna take off of her clock, and the clock
and
is a
she,
huge resource, and
mhm.
and you need that time, you know what I mean? She recognized very quickly how valuable that time was, and, this is why we've
Yep.
dedicated a spot just for death clock as a win condition.
Yes. Also, because I am the player of I won't kill any of your models, but I'll try to win on scenario. Or I won't kill any full units or things like that, but I'll try to win on scenario. Um, because a lot of the models I am rating them on how much of the death clock of the opponent will they eat just to deal with. Because in a game of War Machine, you only have so many dice that you can roll. So you're going to have to figure out where you want those dice to go and realize that you have a finite resource of time. And some of the pieces you can have can be attacks on your opponent's time. Yeah. Yep. Yep. So, okay. Barney 2, having Blackest Night. Yeah. -6. So I love that. I think Wanderer plays a very similar game of I'm just going to make the game as slow and miserable for the opponent as possible for attack rolls. And being able to hit, being able to successfully kill things by using things like Starcross and all these minuses to hit. Um, and yeah, it's a direct attack on the opponent's time, and I think it's a very strong strategy to consider. Um,
I feel
be,
like I feel
yeah.
like taking defensive pieces can really just be a consideration to have if you're trying to edge people out on time, or if you have defensive pieces in your list, right? Because it's kind of like you said, like the Nemo under feet, or even not under feet with the 5 focus. It's going to take a considerable amount of time for the opponent potentially to unlock that box and make all the attack rolls required just to eliminate that piece. And I've
Hmm.
noticed a lot of times in the Jake's list when I play it, because I'm bringing what seven ward cohort models at base plus two heavy airdrops, right? Like I'm not making necessarily a lot of attacks. I'm just moving forward my list and letting my opponent attack into me. And most games when I look over at the clock, like I have a considerable time advantage. And sometimes I look at it and I'm thinking, okay, well, I don't necessarily need to make great plays. I just need to make plays that kind of threaten my opponent on scenario or assassination and force them to have to eat some more time to deal with it if I just want to win out the game. Um, so it's just a kind of a thought I just had about it, and I kind of want to see what you think about it.
Oh yeah. I was going to reference my round 3 opponent, which I dropped Aurora. And I should have dropped Lecoq. And he told me, David told me, because he was playing Minoth, and he was playing Krios 2 with all of the weapon masters. But the thing is, and this is going to go to a point that I'm building to here. The thing is that he was like, no, the LeConte would have been so good into it because even though I have the weapon masters, they're like pound 9 weapon masters, and I don't have. And while I have a lot of them, it's going to destroy my clock because it takes so long to activate everything. And this is something that you may want to consider when list building is quantity. Having enough attacks on the list is great, but you may want to consider because I find that from Mark II to now, quality is way more important than it used to be. Because I used to take a large quantity, I would buff up the units, I would send them in, and I would try to use the minimum required effort to fight everything, even if it took multiple turns to fight things. Um, because I just wanted to. That was still effective in that the opponent could kill models very like they could kill models and it's eating their clock, but it's also eating my clock just to activate like 10 Mechanothralls with 2 attacks each. Uh, with some brute thralls with 2 attacks each. And really, the brute thralls are the ones with quality attacks. The mechanic thralls might have quality attacks, but I only have so much time in which I can spend making attacks. And it's important to consider what pieces you're using to kill what. And for you to be maximizing your activation, maximizing your time with your activation in terms of if I'm activating 5 models, or not 5 models, let's say I'm activating 6 models, right? 5 models is how many can show up in a unit. So let's say I'm activating 6 models. Am I getting the most that I can get out of 6 model activations?
Or do you even want to get the most out of them? Right? Like,
Well, some pieces will be defensive, but some pieces will be offensive. For your offensive pieces, are you getting the most you can get out? Or are you just, because a thing that you say is, and it's true, is point cost is a very powerful rule. It's a very relevant, powerful rule, um, and which is why you take a lot of cheap heavies in Jakes. And you try to squeeze in more cheap heavies.
well, let me clarify what I was asking. Like, for example, if I
Mhm.
activate a unit of Rangers, right, and I
Huh?
charge a model, right, because they have their PAL 12 reach on the charge, which isn't great, but they can kill a light or something like that on a charge with
Mhm.
3 dice, right? Or they can finish off a light,
Mhm.
as it were, right? Like not necessarily full to dead it. They also have combined arms, and they have their volume fire or machine guns and all that other stuff, right? Like, so the question is, and this is a real consideration. It's like, once I've killed that light, do I want to waste the time trying to just make random attacks with a machine gun, or just end their activation and move on to the next relevant target? Because it's really easy for you to be like, oh, and I can do this, and I can do that, and I can do this other thing, and I can kill these guys and those guys and these other guys, and they're not in the zone. And yeah, sure, maybe they could be in the zone next turn, but how valuable is that if you're already behind on the clock, right? Like, sometimes you just need to do the things you need to do for that turn. If you're already like low on clock versus compared to your opponent, do the things you need to do, move on to the next thing that you need to do, end your turn as quickly as possible.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, you could have gotten more, but is it more if you lose on time, right? Like,
Yep. Now let's talk about losing on time. Well, actually, yeah, I agree with your point. And let's talk about losing on time. If you are really good at this game, you'll still reach points in the game where you and your opponent are down to very little time left.
mhm. Yeah, this is a
So
very
what you're
important point
trying
that you brought up, or also that I really loved. Go ahead.
what you're trying to achieve is optimal placement to where you can pass, and based on game state, you're going to win if you just keep passing. And your opponent will hit a point where they can make a couple more attacks. They can try to kill a couple more models, but you've reached a game state of, okay, this is going to be a pass, pass, pass. And you want to be thinking about what that's going to look like in your game if you have good parity of clock with your opponent, if you are both around the same amount of time. You may want to consider, okay, I just need to look at strong board positioning because it's only 7 turns in the game.
There's one thing that I did not mention in the expectations about the game that I really didn't even think about even until today, which is, I love the way that they kind of have merged the death clock rules with the time turns rules, in the sense that time turns was always 7 rounds, and so now it's still 7 rounds, or you get the 7 rounds from the time turns, but you have the death clock to allow yourself to allocate the time among those 7 rounds in a way that makes sense, right? And in
Mm-hmm.
a sense too, because you have 10 minute in time turns, it was 10-minute turns for 7 rounds, so that's 70 minutes. So you even lose a little bit of time. So was it like 8 or 9 minutes per turn? But you get to divvy
Yep.
it up on the important terms. Like, obviously, Turn 1, where you're just moving your models, you don't need too much time. But turns 2 and 3 is going to be where you're going to make a lot of times the most attacks, most important decisions of the game. Maybe even turn 5, depending on how the positioning of the opening rounds goes. And then, but you have you have to be able to allocate, and you have the ability to be able to allocate that time as you need it. But if you need to buy time, it's exactly what you said. Like, if you position yourself properly, you can get a lot of that time back from your opponent, because you can just pass and force your opponent to have to deal with your board position if you're if you're in a commanding position, or even if you're in a position where it's just even and the opponent doesn't want to commit. Well, you can kind of force them to commit, because if you're in a state where pass just ends up in you winning, they're going to have to make a move, right?
Bingo. Yeah. So yeah, I absolutely, and I agree with that, and I've very much been like that. That's the position you want to look at. It's also a consideration for list building. If you have modules in your list, or a small module in your list that says this model really shines on turn 4 and 5, like you could be like, okay, this model actually really shines on turn 4 and 5. This model will do work once a lot of the bigger pieces are off the board, and this model can really shine. Now, the first model you should look at to whether they do that or not is your caster, because your caster is theoretically in all parts of the game.
Right.
But you want to look at those models that can really contribute in turn 4 and 5 for those last passes,
Right.
right?
Or I mean, kind of like terminus casters, right? Like there's certain casters in the game even right now. They're not as egregious as terminus, but like you can identify the models that can legitimately remove your caster or threaten your caster. If you can eliminate those models, right, then your caster really becomes an important piece in the game.
Decalthos exists. He's in New Crypts.
Okay, well,
There is a terminus-like caster.
sure. But I imagine he doesn't give all undead models sack pawn or whatever it was that Terminus has, right? Like, it's not as egregious as that, you know.
And tough.
And
And
tough,
tough.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I forgot about the tough part. Yeah, it's not as bad as that. And Terminus was just even hard enough to kill, even without all that, right? Like he was just
He was a
really,
14-18.
yeah. And how many focus 6?
Hey.
Even, but. Yeah, well, hey, Steven, we're glad to have you, even if we're almost done here. Yeah, it's busy during the holidays, but hey, we're still here trying to make it happen. It's going good.
I think in terms of also the consideration for death clock. So I'm going to talk to you about another scenario, which is you're losing on death clock, and you decide you're gonna chip and chair, and you're gonna go for an assassination run because you're dying on death clock. You put it together, you fail the assassination run, and you pass to your opponent. You're gonna lose the game. I personally believe that this is the point that you're not conspiring with your opponent, but you want to encourage your opponent to do everything that they can to get as many control points and to kill as many models for higher strength of schedule as possible. Even if they have your caster on a platter, encouraging your opponent to do the things that will make them have higher strength schedule if they're up for it, I think is good sportsmanship.
I think it's great sportsmanship, and I think it's very encouraging. Like, you want to show your opponent that you kind of care about them, right? Or that you do care about them,
Mhm.
and encouraging them to score, like that. That is a level of competitive, sportsmanship that you're not going to see in a lot of other games, right? Trying to help your opponent, you know, do the best that they can for their own strength of schedule, I think is a great way to build community. It's great sportsmanship, and I think it's just great all the way around the game.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know if you have anything else that you wanted to add on the death clock. Subject. I think we did a pretty good job on it. I can't think of anything else. I really loved the pass. I that and the there's one more thing. I think you did kind of briefly touch on it, which is kind of like when you're list designing, and we're talking about death clock. Model quality versus model quantity. I think this is a conversation I had with you so many times. I'm like,
Yeah.
I just don't understand, because you know how I am about point cost. And I'm like, why
I
are
know
they
you are very much a stickler too. I want as cheap of jacks as possible. Like there's certain things that I'm like, yeah, that's a Keith Jack loadout.
right? Yeah. Why are
So
people taking Deuce? Why are people taking Plugger? And Plugger, I get a lot more than Deuce, but Deuce is 17 points. It's like, and I know he can choose his shots, and especially with Kane, you get to choose 2, etc. That's a great question, JVR. Let me finish up my point here, and then we'll get to that. Why are people taking Deuce? Well, I don't understand why they're investing this into 17 points. Like, over how many? Like, I don't want to play the game 7 turns. I want to win on scenario by turn 4 or 5, right? Like, when is Deuce going to get his points if I do that? Like, never. But the answer to the question is not about getting your points. It's about managing your clock. It's about managing or making sure you get those quality attacks, because you're not going to be able to activate all of your models. You're not going to be able to make all of your attacks, and Deuce is always going to be able to attack with his range and repo 3. So that's kind of the answer that I didn't understand, and I was kind of looking for as an answer to that question. So having
you compare
those high qualities, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Having that conversation, especially like because we had a lot of conversations about, I think was it Rangers or Commandos in terms of their offensive output.
Both probably.
Both probably. And you're looking at, okay, you want some of that, but something like Deuce takes a shorter time to activate and can be more focused in his like contribution.
Right.
Which is what you want, because it's not a ton of models contributing to the opponent necessarily winning. You want to remove the models that are stopping you from winning. And I just thought of another thing in terms of quantity and quality that also goes into the scenario thing, which is you may want to look at your opponent's list when you're playing in terms of quantity and quality and be like, this person has 2 contributors to the 50 mil. Well, if I kill both of those, all they can do is contest.
Right.
So
or with their caster.
Yeah, or with their well, then we're playing a different.
Then we're playing the assassination game. That's another subject.
So for 10 or 15 minutes, when I start worrying about my clock, it depends on what turn.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
If I am on feat turn and I get down to 15 minutes, and that's like if it's like an active aggressive feat that like adds power and stuff like that, like I'm expecting that turn to take a bulk of my game. And if I end with 20 minutes, like and this is a full caveat of I am working on no longer being as rusty with the clock as I am. But getting back to it, 15 or 10, I start getting worried in the later terms if I am losing and I have 5 minutes left. But if I am winning, as long as my opponent doesn't have a large deficit, because I look at the difference of time. If my opponent has 40 minutes at the end of round 3 or 4, and I have a lot less than that, that's actually what I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about the deficit. I want my clock and my opponent's clock to have parity.
Or
That's actually what I'm going for. Or I want to be in the plus,
yeah.
but I typically am concerned once we don't have parity and I'm in the losing edge. It's less about the time left and more about how much more time the opponent has to be able to use the clock against me and what pieces they have left that's going to take time for me to deal with. That's actually what I worry about more than a fixed time. How about you, Keith? Old chess player, what do you think?
I'm also rustier than I would like to be with the clock. Yeah, I'm with you there, Cosmo. I'm rustier than I'd like to be with the clock. I used to play a lot of very quick chess, 5 minutes or less. And I used to be a lot quicker, like you, Cass, with the clock than I am now, especially having to move a larger volume of models. So I'd like to get kind of back to that. I mean, like I said, I'm looking to end the game on scenario victory, turn 4 or 5 at the latest. So I can kind of not be too concerned about the clock unless I really need to, unless my model, I find that very defensive models take a lot of my time away because I end up doing falling into the trap of trying to kill them all or trying to kill the ones, or it's difficult to move them off a scenario and to achieve that win. So it takes me a lot more time. I haven't had any issues with clock except for into very defensive players so far. And even when I had like, I don't know, 15 minutes on turn 4, I did clock myself in that game. Maybe if I had your 25 PAL math working for me, I wouldn't have made some of the mistakes that I made, and I would have been able to be more successful at the assassination. But it is what it is.
I mean, I did that after the tournament.
Yeah,
that is what I was like. Oh, I need a map like this that I can easily look at models and be like, this.
Yeah. I would like to bring up one more quick point before we wrap this up. Yeah, I was mentioning that earlier. The sometimes you just need to do the things that you need to do and not worry about your additional attacks and dirtling. Absolutely what you're saying here. Just maybe a more different way or a better way of saying it than I said it. Jay Beatnik. One more thing that I would like to mention about Death Clock that just kind of occurred to me during the cast is with the prevalence of Longshanks and not Longshanks. What's the one we're using for the for tournaments?
Longshanks?
Okay, no, Longshanks. With the prevalence of Longshanks and the posting of lists before the event, something that you really did, which was fantastic, by the way, is that you took some time to investigate the opponent's lists. You can really save yourself a lot of time on your clock by kind of reviewing the lists that you're going to be going against and identifying, okay, first of all, you can save yourself some frustration by choosing ahead of time what you're going to drop into each list pair. Okay, so that way you don't have to have that load of decision making on the top of your head before going into the event. Secondly, if you want to take it a step further, you can also kind of identify what models you need to deal with in each of those lists. That way you can identify what your plan is to deal with them and how you're going to deal with them with what models. And doing that can save you a lot of time on death clock because you won't be using all that time making those decisions live in the game. All that decision making will be done beforehand. You'll have an action plan going into the game, and you can line yourself up for success on Death Clock that way as well.
And just remember to bring your own notes when you do that.
Or put them on Discord or something you have access
or put them on
to.
Discord or something, because if you forget them, then you're like, what matchup did I want here? Like, because I had my lists in, and this is the other thing. Even if it's a bad plan, let's say you miscalculated, your math isn't right, it's a bad plan. You still came into it with a plan, which is going to save you time. And in the moment, having a plan going into something that takes so many cycles is a great thing. Even if it's a bad plans can still win.
Absolutely.
And even if they don't let you win, they teach you a lesson for the next time that you play.
That's true. Well, Cass, do you have any closing thoughts before I take us out of here?
My closing thoughts are the last and most important for when I was playing in Mark II was started playing in Mark II in 2010 when I really started getting into the War Machine scene. I played Mark One before that, but Mark Two I did that, and the importance here is that that was in 2010. It is 2025. So the ultimate death clock for me is how many rounds can I make it, and what strategies do I need going into each round? Because can you play your grindhouse list every all 3 rounds? Do you have the endurance? Because when you go to your weekly game club, how many games do you play? Do you play one? Do you play two? Do you play three? Three seems like a lot that you have. So something like War Table or things like that to help you with not only matchup familiarity, but your matchup endurance. Because that is a key feature that affects everybody's gameplay is their conditioning.
That's absolutely true. Great words of wisdom there. And before I take us out of here, I just want to thank everybody in the chat and everybody watching for joining us on this episode of Cosmolus Amusing Panda. And we hope to have him back next week because I'm sure he's significantly more insightful and interesting than I am. Maybe not more than Cass is. Cass is pretty insightful and interesting. And I appreciate their insights greatly as we have our discussions around the apartment. Thanks for stopping by and joining us, and we will catch you again next week on the Amusing Panda podcast. Take care.
Thank y'all for having me.